Hi, this is Francis Zoe Agagad and this is my report on Afro-Asian literature. For my African literature, I chose Osun from Love in Color by Bolo Babalola. Bolo Babalola is a Nigerian-British author and her debut anthology, Love in Color, was published in 2020. Osun was based on African mythology and in fact, Osun is a goddess of love and sweet waters in African mythology. This story is set in Ifa Academy wherein different goddesses and gods from African mythology was portrayed as either Osun's classmates or Osun's schoolmates. At the African mythology, Osun was the cosmological force of fresh water such as streams, rivers, and lakes. But at this story, Osun is a competitive swimmer who has an intrinsic allure that followed her as she flew into the air before diving into water. Osun was so amusing as she swam in the waters that those who watched her often mused that it was as if the waters are only existed to propel her. Osun was used to being a spectacle. People watched her, observed her, trying to surmise what they could from what they saw of her. Which was why she always kept to herself as she could and hid from others as much as she could. No one really saw her or knew her but herself. However, one night, at the Ohide Obe festival at her academy, she felt someone staring at her so intent that it was as if that look saw into her. And the only reason that she could not see who it was for practical reason. It was because Sango's arms was wrapped around her. Sango, in African mythology, he is the deity of fire and lighting. In Osun, in the story, he is Osun's lover. It is a known fact within the academy and within the country that Osun was the only one who could calm Sango whenever there were times that there was someone that disrespected Sango's authority. And although Sango is a girl player, Osun did not mind. All of Sango's girls don't matter because Osun knew she was all of them put together and more. There were just iterations of her, splittered into lesser forms. Osun knew that when she smiled, rare but it happened, it was as bright and as intense as the sun and moon. Osun knew that when they were together, Sango drowned in her, died and came back to life. And that when their hips rolled together, it was stormy waves, almighty, thrilling, terrifying. She knew she tastes like honey and liquor and that she left him both satisfied and insatiable, tipsy and all at her whim. Osun knew that she was all Sango ever wanted and more, and she also knew that it was the more that frightened him. He never liked to wonder whether he was enough to match her too much. So he had to seek balance with other diluted derivations of her. She was fine with all of this until the week before, 6 days before the Ohide Oba festival at her sister Yemoha's Earth Journey celebration. This introduces us to another character, Yemoha. Yemoha is Osun's sister, and she descended from the school a year ago. The two sisters had the same face poured into different forms. Osun felt her sister was more sophisticated version of her, and it was because Yemoha was taller, lither, and also an expert sailor. Yemoha highlighted what Osun lacked, and though Osun loved her sister and her sister loved her back, she couldn't help but feel lesser around her. Osun felt uncomfortable and left the teaming party. She went for a walk through the forest, aiming for the river, a place where she felt peace. It was a surprise that she saw the broad muscular shoulder of Sango, who a mere 30 minutes ago wrapped his arms around Osun and whispered that she was his love. Now that arms are wrapped around someone else. Osu saw that Sango's neck was bent as he whispered something into that someone else's ears before kissing it. He then said louder, "Osun doesn't like to dance. I miss dancing. Dance with me." Sango moved to the side and Osun saw that it was Oba, Sango's former lover, that Sango was currently dancing with. Oba was meek and irritatingly sweet, a sweetness that Osun found cloying. Even after Osun had successfully captured Sango's attention, Oba had been kind to Osun, insisting she held no ill will, that all she ever wished was for Sango to be happy. However, Oba's involvement was not what struck Osun so hard in her chest that she almost fell and stumbled back. It was Sango's words, and it was a lie. Osun loved to dance. She and Yemoha danced by the seashore every night at sunset. Osun danced every time she was in the water. She thought that Sango, at the least, saw that. Through everything, the one that kept her tethered to Sango was that he saw her. And now, she realized that this was an illusion and they never really saw each other. After a few moments, Oba saw Osun through the branches and froze. Sango followed Oba's gaze and saw Osun too. Sango stepped towards Osun, but Osun raised a hand. Oba looked sorry for Osun and Osun felt sick to her stomach. So she smiled. She smiled so wide and beautiful, dazzling and terrible. Then Osun turned around and returned to the party as if nothing had happened. From that day on, Sango was too terrified to speak to Oba ever again, and didn't dare visit his other girls. For reason Osun could not confess to anyone, not even herself, she stayed. Sango still never asked Osun to dance. Going back to the first scenes of the story where Osun felt someone staring at her intently, it was set in the Academy celebration of the iteration of the Ohida Obe Festival. Osun was sitting along with her sister Yamaha and her lover who she had already forgiven, Sango. At Osun's side was his boyfriend, Sango. Sango, who got all the attention to himself, was telling stories to his boys, and he was holding a palm wine sloshing out of his cup. Osun rolled her eyes at her boyfriend's arrogant stories while Sango's court rolled with jest as he told them his stories. Osun felt ill and uncomfortable, so she shrugged Sango's arm off her neck, feigning that she was readjusting the multicolored beads that hung around her throat. That was then that she felt a man staring at her. She looked at this man, and this man's eyes were calling her, pressing through her, seeing into her, and he wasn't bowing. He had 3 striking scars around his muscular chest and on the left side, whilst she immediately wanted to run her fingers across. He smiled at her as if he knew. Osun was so curious that she had to pinch her sister beside her and ask her who that new tall boy was, in which her sister was so surprised that she blinked not only once, twice, but thrice, because Osun was asking her about things that sisters normally talked about. Yemoha thought that her sister was extraordinarily beautiful and also extraordinarily beautifully strange. She rarely knew what Osun was talking about, and oftentimes, she just pretended to know what Osun was saying, and Osun also pretended that she understood. And so, she delightedly answered all of Osun's inquiry about the man. Through Yemoha, Osun learned that the man is named Erinle, and that He won the countrywide competition for hunting and won for a spot in the academy. Yamaha also told Osun that the man is a master bowman and a farmer who could bring crops to life with his touch. As Osun and Yamaha was talking, she heard a low, cool voice that she somehow knew belonged to Erinle. And yet his mouth didn't open. She dared to think, playing with the notion that he might hear her. From the broadening of his smile and the light in his lips, it was clear that he had heard her reply. Osun could see now that time had stopped, or at least it had been suspended. Sango's laughter sounded as if it had been submerged in water, and her sister's warmth had ebbed away. Everything was a blur, and the festival was occurring in slow motion. She found now that she was now standing opposite Erinle, inches away from him, close enough to reach out and touch the ridge of his scars if he were so inclined. In their minds, they were talking to each other, and all the while, Osun's heartbeat was hectic, frantic, and at odds with the stillness surrounding them. Erinle asked her what she desires, what she wants. It is a question that she had never been asked before. Erinle looked at Osun intently, as if he was seeing her more. He smiled and it rippled sunlight through her. Osun was surprised when Sango sang, and in those lyrics she found the words that she wanted and desired. It included how she wanted to be loved and how she feels that she deserves to be loved. In that song that everyone in the party could hear, along with Yamaha and Sango, Erinle was bravely asking for Osun's hands. And in those lyrics, he also asked Osun to dance, something that Sango, Osun's lover, never asked. Sango, who stopped talking to his friends when he heard Erinle singing, thundered beside Osun, but Osun stopped his rage. He obeyed Osun and kept his jaw clenched instead. Osun, who never laughed at Erinle's song. Osun got up and paid no attention to Sango. She followed Erinle in the middle of the courtyard and allowed her hips to switch with the beat, her arms to sway through the air, laughing as she did so. There was thunder, but Erinle's drum rose above it, interlaced with Osun's laugh. There was lighting, but Osun's smile outshone it. Osun was used to being looked at, but from this moment, she would become used to being seen.